Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 9th, 2020 meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. We are glad you're with us as always. To all of our friends looking in on Facebook Live, we welcome you. We will begin, as we always do, with invocation. Would you please bow with me? Dear Heavenly Father, please look over our community, our county, and this fiscal court as we make decisions to try to help our neighbors, our friends, and the residents of Henderson County. Please be with us as we deal with difficult times. Please help us pray for peace, understanding, tolerance. We know that we are a nation of free speech and free association. We are also a nation of laws and justice. And we pray that you'll help us balance those for the betterment of all of our people. We ask you to watch over people of Henderson County. We ask you to watch over our first responders and all those serving overseas. And we ask to watch all those dealing with health issues. And we pray for the future health of our community. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can stand or sit wherever you are. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to
the flag
of the
United States of America.
To the republic,
To the republic,
which is one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty, justice for all.
Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Manager Putman.
Here.
Manager Moran.
Here.
Manager Southern.
Here.
Manager McCollum.
Here.
Manager Berry.
Here.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You have before you the minutes of the May 26th, 2020 Fiscal Court meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Magistrate McCollum, a second by Magistrate Berry. Any further corrections, clarifications, or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. And do we have representatives of Geronimo Energy with us on the call?
You do.
Is that Kip Nelman, I hear?
It is.
Kip, thank you for joining us. We are eager to hear a presentation about Geronimo Energy's projects in Henderson County. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Brad. Thank you for allowing us to visit with you this morning about a very exciting Unbridled solar project that will be in Webster and in Henderson counties. I want to, before we start, I want to let you know that Tina Munson, who is in our development group and is in charge of our Kentucky projects, is also with us today. And I also think Ellie DeBleek is listening in, who's an associate on the development team. So we're, as I mentioned, very happy and looking forward to answering any questions. How the agenda will work is I'll give you a background as it relates to who we are and why we're in Kentucky. And Tina will walk through the process as to what you should be expecting, and hopefully we'll have time for questions as well. So if we turn to the slide that talks a little bit about Geronimo Energy. Geronimo is one of the leading renewable energy development companies in the U.S. We have been developing wind and solar projects since 2004, when it was first started by our chairman, Noel Ron. We currently have over 2,400 megawatts of wind and solar projects that are either currently in operation or under construction. And those 2,400 megawatts have really been developed, built, and sold or owned in most of the parts of our U.S., but our focus has been the Midwest And roughly 3 to 4 years ago, we started expanding our footprint. And one of the areas that we were very excited about to develop was the Southeast, and in particular, Kentucky. Our organization is not what I would call small, but we're not so large that we can't get things done in an efficient way. We have over 100 professionals at Geronimo. The vast majority are in our headquarters in Edina, Minnesota, or I should say Bloomington, Minnesota. Now we just moved a few months ago. And we do have, though, a number of outstate offices in which our people are directly responsible for projects that are either under construction or in operation, and they stay in those communities to serve the projects on behalf of Geronimo. What's really important for this group to recognize is our investment philosophy, which really started with our founder, Noel Ron, who, by the way, grew up on a farm in southwest Minnesota and continues to farm with his brother in that part of the region in Minnesota. And his belief has always been that you need to treat the landowner, and in particular the farmer and the rancher, with as much honesty and integrity as you would expect anybody to treat you. And that's really what we have done over the years. You will find, if you talk to our landowners, that we treat them as partners. We want to make certain that our partners are well informed, as well as making certain that they know that we are working with them. Our leases, when we lease land, typically can go as long as 50 years. So as everybody knows, when you have a partnership or a marriage, better have some good relationships, because it can be very tough if you don't, knowing that it's going to last that long period of time. So I think Tina and I really want to stress this farmer-friendly philosophy, because we really do want to be a partner in this and make certain that our landowners really understand what we're doing and have some input in terms of, in the development phases, making sure we hear those voices. And finally, Geronimo, up until last year, was an independent company. And we, in July of 2019, we were acquired by National Grid, which is the large United Kingdom transmission and utility operator that had wanted to really have or make an impact in the renewable space. And the best way they found that to be achievable was to acquire Geronimo. So we are part of their non-regulated arm, and we are the renewable energy developer for National Grid. Nothing has changed other than the ownership. We continue to have our entrepreneurial spirit, and National Grid is wise enough to understand that success has come as a result of that entrepreneurial spirit, and they definitely don't want to disrupt that. So with that, we can turn to the next slide, which will really show you that Geronimo has made a big commitment in the state of Kentucky. We believe there's a lot of opportunity to explore those opportunities in solar. And you can see we have 6 sites currently that we are developing, and hopefully all of those will come to fruition. But we will continue to identify areas that we think would be good for solar, in which the communities are asking for it. Again, this is a commitment that you should kind of look at as a long-term commitment. We are not a developer that's coming in, developing, and then leaving. We are a developer that actually owns the projects, and we will make certain that those projects are are going to be run effectively and efficiently and in conformity with how our landowners are expecting those projects to move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina Munson, who, as I mentioned, is one of our leads in development and is responsible for the state of Kentucky. So Tina, please join in.
Sure. Thank you, Kip. Well, I think Kip did a good job introducing who we are at Geronimo and what we do in our commitment to Kentucky. I think the map that you saw of Kentucky with our 6 projects is just the start. So we anticipate adding more projects throughout the state, which is, you know, a further demonstration of our commitment to the state. And I will say, Kip sort of skipped over this, but Kip spends quite a bit of time in Kentucky, and maybe Brad has told you that, but Kentucky is a special place for Kip. Kip, you've got a farm in Paris, and hopefully when the doors open up and we can come back in person, hopefully we'll be able to do that, and Kip can just saunter over and say hi to everybody in person. It's good that we have these tools to be able to do these things digitally or electronically, but we also love to do things in person. So hopefully soon, of course, keeping everybody's safety in mind as well. So with that, I'm actually just going to go ahead and introduce the project, get into some of the high-level details. I'll talk a little bit about timelines of the project, and then, of course, I'll also dive into the permitting process that we'll see in Kentucky, and I think that's a really important piece for the fiscal court to understand how that works. And then I'll hopefully leave a few minutes for Q&A. We find that to be the most beneficial part of the presentation to make sure that we're answering the questions that you guys have, or answering your questions on the project. So the project's called Unbridled. It's anticipated to be 160 megawatts, and that will be approximately 1,500 acres. And I have a map on the next slide that we can kind of go into more details about what it looks like. But that 1,500 acres may fluctuate depending on sort of final constraints like wetlands or other things that we may find, as well as final equipment. But it's kind of it's a pretty good estimate of how large we anticipate the project to be. So I'm going to go with like 75, 25%, 75% in Henderson, 25% in Webster. So it does straddle the county line there. It is located about 2 miles west of the Big Rivers coal plant, and a portion of the 4-star industrial park is proposed to be part of our project. So I'll walk through that on the next slide as well. We expect the operation date, so basically when it's built and we're selling the power, to be at the end of 2023 at the latest. The carbon dioxide emission offset is equivalent to approximately taking 55,000 cars off the road. And if you've taken a look, I think in the last week or so, there has been some press release on our newest partnership with Big Rivers Electric, who will be buying the power from the project, which is a really exciting partnership for us, and we're really proud of that. So here's a good map of the facility, or of the proposed facility. You can see in the northeast is Roberts, which is the small town there. And the eastern boundary is actually the railroad that runs through that area. And there's about 410, I'm just shy of 420 acres west of the railroad that would be the 4-star property. So we kind of bisect it a little bit. And then to the east, you can identify where the Columbia warehouse is. I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse, but I'll try to mark them with the mouse here. This is the distribution facility, Columbia's, and then this is the Tyson poultry plant. If you go further east, you would be able to see the generating facility, but we wanted to make sure that you had a good view on where this project is located. And I can come back to this if you guys want during Q&A, no big deal. So some of the most important pieces are the economic benefits of the facility. So we anticipate about $4 million in an estimated tax revenue over 25 years of operation, $250 million in capital investment. In terms of jobs, we anticipate 5 full-time equivalent and about 150 construction jobs, which of course what comes with that is increased local spending. And we've seen that to be a significant amount in our in our projects across the U.S. And one thing we're really proud of is, and it's very unique to Geronimo's charitable fund, which we are targeting and estimating to be $640,000 over the 20 years. Now, our charitable funds can take a number of different forms. Typically with solar, we see it sort of go towards an education fund where we have that money divided across school districts within the footprint. However, we are open to sort of designing that fund to be as sort of as specific or sort of trying to figure out what the community wants that to be, what the needs are for the community. And so we don't have a ton of details on the charitable fund at this time. As we continue outreach and making sure we're speaking with all the stakeholders as well as the community members, the neighbors and the people in the counties, this charitable fund will take more form and we'll have more detail on how we anticipate those funds to be distributed. We like to say solar projects are good neighbors primarily because they don't do a whole lot. So you know, I'll walk through this a little bit and explain what that means. But you know, one of the great things about solar is it doesn't require any additional public services. So you don't see, you're getting this influx of economics, but you don't see increased pressure on schools. You don't see increased pressure on your roads. Of course, you know, no significant need for police or for emergency services. They're low profile, so no more than 15 to 18 feet, sort of at the peak of the panel. They can be definitely lower than that. Really just depends on your equipment as well as topography. So they're nice low profile. They don't have any harmful pollutants. There's no negative health impacts, no odor produced, no air or water emissions. And we say sort of minimal sound produced. I'd like to say they're virtually noiseless, but they're not quite, you can't quite say that because we have electrical equipment that does make sound just like any other electrical equipment that's out there. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we sort of study and how we handle noise from the project in a couple slides. And then we do some plantings. They can be perennial plantings. They can be native plantings, sort of depends on the area, depends on what the community would like to see. But either way, by creating this sort of stable habitat, we help with decrease stormwater runoff, improve infiltration, and then help promote biodiversity. So just going to run into next steps and timelines so you have some expectation of what we're going to be doing until 2023. So we have just kicked off our public outreach in terms of, you know, speaking with the counties in the area. We spoke with Webster yesterday, obviously speaking with you today. We'll be talking to Union and McLean as well. We'll be reaching out and getting on council meetings for the surrounding towns. And then of course, there's a lot of individual engagement with community members, you know, economic development authorities, those types of engagement that we'll be doing here in the next 6 months. It'll be continued, and it's really early, often, and all the way through the project. We find this to be our most important aspect of what we do as developers, to ensure everybody has their questions answered, people have the information they need, they have access to somebody who's going to call them and answer their questions that they have. This piece is really important to us. And then, of course, we'll be completing our environmental survey, so just finalizing information about the site that we need to know to ensure we understand our constraints. And in the midterm, we'll be going through the state level permitting process. And I have 2 or 3 specific slides that I'll dive into next on that, because it's a very important piece for the local communities to understand. In terms of the longer term, we'll be procuring equipment and completing final design. And then construction is scheduled to start in the fall of 2022. We anticipate a facility of this size to have enough time if we start in the fall and are able to complete it by the end of 2023. So that's a little bit of timeline. There's obviously a lot more detail here, but high level, this just helps you understand what we're going to be doing and where we'll be going. So a little bit about the permitting process. So Kentucky has an electric generation and transmission siting board at the state level that falls under the Public Service Commission. We just call it the siting board for short. it's pretty much a 9 to 12 month process to obtain the construction certificate. So particularly with COVID-19, we anticipate of taking that full 12 months at this time. That is obviously subject to change. We are targeting to submit our application by the end of this year. The process includes public information meetings, which is primarily, obviously for the public, having some sort of open house where we continue to maneuver our way a little bit around how we meet those state requirements along with, the COVID-19 situation. So we see what other developers are doing, and we're trying to learn some lessons and see what we can do there. We are, however, obviously communicating with neighbors, sending out information to them anyway, regardless of having a public information meeting. So we continue to work on that process. There's, of course, a formal application review, and then there will be hearings at the state level. Now, I think the really important piece here to drive home is that typically the county judge is on the siting board, and there is an additional resident that's appointed or placed on the siting board as well. So the local government, the local communities have a voice here. It's really important you understand that. It's really important for us that we understand your voice. We want to know what kind of product you want to see in your community. We want to make sure if you have concerns or if there's ways that we can design the facility that helps mitigate any issues you have or the community has, we want to do that. We want to put our best foot forward when we get to the state. And we think we can do that, and we think we can do that with collaboration with you and the other communities in the area. And so we're looking forward to that, making sure that we produce something that works for the hosting communities. There's an environmental assessment done by the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet. It's fairly straightforward because it asks for impacts on air, water, and any waste that it produces. Solar obviously doesn't have any of that, so pretty straightforward there. And then on the local level, we do have Henderson County does have a solar ordinance, so we will be coming in for a site plan review to the board. And that process is, we would anticipate doing that process once we have completed outreach and designed a facility that works for the community, and making sure we've implemented all those pieces prior to coming for that approval. And then there's, of course, administrative permits, both in Henderson and Webster County, which will include driveway permits, any kind of crossings under roads or borings. I'm sure there's more to it than just those couple, but there will be, the point there is there will be plenty of interaction between us and the local communities on this project from now through the siting board, through 2021 for the siting board, and then of course on into construction. So this is one of the first of many information presentations. Happy to do more as we progress for updates, whatever is needed. And I just want to drive that home because I think that's a really important part of what we do and how to make sure we produce a project that's good for the community. Here are the typical studies and research that we have to complete for the state process, which we typically do anyway, regardless if it's state or local. And you guys can read, so I'll let you guys take a look at that. But in terms of noise, is sort of one thing I like to talk about. What we basically do is we take a look at basically dBA and the distance from the electrical equipment to understand at what point do you have what dBA. And typically the measurement that we like to go with is sort of a local residential dBA standard, and how far away from the equipment do you have to be before you sort of hit that dBA. And we'll be doing those studies prior to submitting our application. And then the other thing that's really important is the visual effects. So working through concerns around visual effects and mitigating those issues to the best of our ability is an important piece of that process. So, I know we only had a certain allotted amount of time. I feel like we've got about 5 minutes here for Q&A, which I think will be great. I wanted to make sure that everybody sees this slide. It's got Kip and my information on here. And it's important because we are an open book. That's how we function. We want to make sure everybody has the information, has their questions answered, whatever it may be, whatever it may take. So please don't feel shy in calling or emailing us, whatever works for you. And I'll stop talking. I gave you a lot of information and happy to take any questions.
Open it up to questions for Tina or Kip. I will tell you that the Four-Star Board has unanimously approved this project, and the contract between Geronimo and Four-Star is now at Department of Local Government being reviewed by their general counsel, and we expect their answer on their approval of that contract within the week, which is great. And it will set up a lot of the next steps that Tina mentioned. So the project is underway and tracking as we'd hoped. And we appreciate Geronimo investing in our county. And for those of you who may not have read some of the coverage of this in local paper, one of the benefits to Henderson County with the establishment of these solar facilities is that many industrial prospects who examined our region recently for site location of plants have specifically requested that a portion of their energy portfolio be from renewables. And it's been very difficult for Big Rivers to show evidence that the current sources they have for power include the percentage of renewables that these companies have required. With the establishment of a solar farm that if you're sitting in the middle of, Station 2 power plant, you can literally point to the solar farm and say, there's where our renewable energy is coming from, and we can provide you the mix of renewables that you desire, is a big selling point for us and might help us land more industry in Four-Star and other parts of the region because we are meeting that need. And that's part of the reason Big Rivers put out the request for proposals from solar companies to begin with. So Geronimo has won that power purchase agreement and is looking to be a good corporate citizen here for a couple decades at least. So thanks to them, and hopefully we'll turn this into even more jobs for Henderson County and the region. Any questions? You've absolutely hit on all the nails, I guess, because we do not have any questions. But there's a...
Well, I apologize. I anticipate there will be more. I know you have a copy of this PowerPoint. I will just share really quickly in the appendix, we have a number of pictures and some information on just solar development, construction, and operations. So feel free to take a look at those. And again, please reach out if you have any other questions that come to mind.
I want to reiterate, during the construction process, approximately 2 or 3 year construction process, there'll be approximately 150 jobs. We would encourage Geronimo to hire as many local contractors as possible in that process. And ongoing, there are 4 or 5 permanent jobs associated with the solar facilities. But of course, the end goal is to use this development to help recruit industries that will employ hundreds of people and require a certain percentage of their power to be renewable. So that is the ultimate payoff in jobs for our region. Again, any questions of Kip or Tina? Excellent. Well, we'll be hearing more as the weeks and months go by, and we appreciate you being here today. Kip has spent a lot of time in Kentucky over the last year and a half, I'll tell you that. And he's even developed a little bit of an accent along with that Minnesota drawl. So it's been good to hear. And Geronimo, from every report we've had in Four-Star's dealings with them, is that they are who they say they are. They care about the agriculture community. They know that this is a bit of a disruption in agriculture, but we're going to be talking a little bit about some more land in the county that's coming online for agriculture. So there could be a good balance here. And I think any fears along the lines of our farming community may be assuaged by that. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Feel free to come back anytime.
Thanks very much.
Okay. We have 2 appointments to make to the library. There are 2 spots coming open. The way the library appointments work is that they suggest possible replacements to the state education workforce cabinet. And those names are sent back to the judge executive, who brings them to fiscal court. And I have consulted with both the chairman of the board and the librarian about preferences or just their perspective on the nominees. And I'd like to appoint both Eric Hoy, who is pastor at Presbyterian Church of Henderson, and David Curlin, who's a local attorney, who both expressed strong desire to serve on the Library Board of Trustees. Eric Hoy and David Curlin, what is your pleasure, please?
I move to accept these nominations.
We have a motion from Beth Moran,
Second.
motion and a second from Magistrate Barry. Any other questions? All those in favor of accepting Eric Hoy and David Curlin as our appointments to the Library Board, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now have second reading of the 2021 budget. Again, that was a solid piece of work by both the fiscal court and department heads to develop a conservative budget based on a lot of question marks about what's going to happen with tax revenues in our economy in the next 12 months. Appreciate all the work on that. I will say that our current fiscal year is ending in a solid fashion, which is good news. We are positioned well to weather whatever happens to us in the next fiscal year in a way that doesn't require us to raise taxes or put undue burdens on our citizens who themselves are going through tough times. Any other comments or questions about the 2021 fiscal year budget before we have it read for the second time? Okay, with that, I'll ask the clerk to read the budget.
Actually, the treasurer has the budget copy in front of her.
Okay, Treasurer Wright.
This is the second reading of the fiscal year 21 budget and has been approved as to form and classification by DLG, the Department of Local Government. The total balanced budget for fiscal year 21 is $29,460,028.98. The corresponding revenue and appropriation balances are, for each fund: general fund, $11,606,365. Road fund, $5,097,283. Jail fund, $9,029,673.98. LGEA fund, $874,550. State grants fund, $691,157. Economic development fund, $60,000. Health insurance fund, $2,101,000. Again, the total for the fiscal year 21 balanced budget is $29,460,028.98.
Motion to approve second reading.
So move. Second.
We have a motion by Magistrate Putman, second by Magistrate McCollum. Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. It's your second budget that you passed. It's not necessarily easy, but I really appreciate the hard work on that, and it's been a smooth process. Next, we have our annual fixing of the compensation of county employees and officers. That list is in your packet. We do have a representative of the jail with us. We have, I believe we can get any, Sheriff Brady is with us. If anybody has any questions about this list, welcome them now. Again, this is an annual requirement to approve salaries and positions. Hearing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
We need to read the
excuse me.
resolution, sir.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
A resolution relating to the Henderson County Fiscal Court reappointing county employees for the fiscal year 2020 to 21. Whereas the judge executive is authorized to appoint, reappoint county employees with the approval of the fiscal court pursuant to KRS 67.7107. Whereas pursuant to KRS 64.530, the fiscal court wishes to fix the reasonable compensation of every county officer and employee, except those named in KRS 64.535. And whereas the statute requires that the fiscal court fix the reasonable compensation of all employees, even elected officials which are not specifically exempted. Now therefore be it resolved by the fiscal court, County of Henderson, Kentucky, as follows. Pursuant to KRS 64.530, the reasonable compensation of all full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees of the county other than those employees enumerated in KRS 64.535 is fixed in accordance to the attached list of said employees and their compensation, which is attached Tier 2 incorporated herein.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Master Putman, second by Magistrate Moran. Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. If you have in your packets a grant from the federal government as part of the CARES Act that distributes a little over $29,000 to the airport. It requires our approval. This is money that does not require a local match. The director of the airport, Alan Bennett, I talked to him yesterday, and this money, I believe they're intending to target it towards the construction of a new hangar, which they are pulling together several grants to help fund. And basically, this is money that just became available to airports, and so we're going to use it. And again, requires an approval of the grant agreement to use it in the ways that the FAA and the federal government has deemed it should be used. So, Mr. Gold, if you want to make a comment at all.
Judge, the agreement has been reviewed and approved as to form and legality. I think you may have mentioned this, but the good thing about it is that there is not a local match involved.
So we do need a vote to approve.
Do we need to read it?
Do we have a resolution attached with this, Mr. Gold?
Yes, we do.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and read the resolution, please. I see it now. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Resolution authorizing Henderson County Judge Executive to execute Federal Aviation Administration CARES Act grant agreement. Whereas Henderson City County Airport Board, Henderson County, and the City of Henderson are co-sponsors for a grant from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act. And whereas the Henderson City County Airport Board has voted to seek a grant up to the sum of $69,000 for operational maintenance expenses of the airport incurred after January 20th, 2020. And whereas there is no state or local contribution required for the grant, the Henderson County Fiscal Court deems it in the best interest of Henderson County to accept said grant. Now therefore be it resolved as that the Henderson County Fiscal Court authorizes directs County Judge Executive Brad Schneider to execute the attached U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Aviation Administration CARES Act Airport Grant Agreement and to execute any and all other necessary and appropriate documents required to effectuate the intent thereof.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Master McCollum, second by Magistrate Southard. I said 29,000, obviously that's 69. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. I'm informed by the county attorney that the detention center medical contract is still under negotiations, finalizing some details. Mr. Gold, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, Judge. I believe the ball's in their court now, so to speak. The bidder that was selected by the jailer was the contract that they provided was actually pretty reasonable. I believe the jailer had warned them that the county attorney would really mark up their contract a whole lot. We actually didn't have to do that a whole lot. There were a few operational things that the jailer wanted changed in there, and I believe those have been made and sent off to them. So should just be waiting for that and should be ready to approve at the next fiscal court meeting.
Excellent. Be able to do that. Members of the jail committee, Manager McCollum, Manager Moran, any additional comments?
No, it looked good.
Okay, so we'll be looking forward to that. But while we have members of the detention center staff on the line, anything that anybody from the jail would like to report on or add to the talk about contract discussions? Okay. Oh, here we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you all? We had a Jailers Association meeting that I just hung up with, and we're looking at opening the jails back up, where each jail has to come up with an individualized plan for the reopening. And that will involve the road crews going back out and doing their normal mowing schedule and come up with the procedures to disinfect everyone, and before they return to the facility, and all the workers will be kept separate from the other inmates in the jail. So we're working on that plan now and just keeping our fingers crossed that things will go smoothly and we can get back to whatever normal is going to be after all of this.
Amy, Bill Fiddler has, his son has developed some equipment and that it's an ionization type process, is my understanding, that sprays something and it doesn't make it really wet. And you might want to talk to them about that, where you can spray down your equipment and spray, it's pretty neat using it in restaurants and different places and stuff, but that might be something you might want to look at.
We just got some and bought the sprayer also for the cells, and it came through a medical supply company. So
Okay.
It's the same one that the city's using on the ambulances and police cars and things.
Excellent. Okay.
Anything else for Jailer Brady? Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it. Keep us
Thanks.
updated and good luck. Mr. Gold, your report.
Judge, I gave several checks to Mr. Weeson earlier today to get to you. Those were $497.65 for reimbursement for dental and life insurance, and health insurance in the amount of $6,990, AFLAC $124.94, flow through from the city $458.33, interest in the amount of $410.71, and $111.96 for a total today of $8,593.59, and a total for the fiscal year to date $158,751.84.
Get a motion to accept those.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Magistrate Putman, a second by Magistrate McCollum. Any questions of Mr. Gold? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we have Treasurer Ryder with some fund transfers and possible claims.
The fund transfers are as presented. These are transfers reallocating appropriations within the existing budget. You will notice that there is a transfer from contingent appropriations to the coroner's supplies and expenses for the purchase of an automobile, which was approved the prior meeting. Also, there is a request for a cash transfer to correct a deposit error.
Give everyone a moment to review those. We have a motion from Magistrate McCollum,
Second.
Second.
second from Magistrate Putman. Any further questions, comments about the transfers? Again, this is the time of the year when we'll be cleaning up a lot of line items with transfers. There'll probably be more next meeting as we get to the end of the year. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, Treasurer Ryder, you have any claims?
Yes. From the general fund to Henderson Ford in the amount of $27,222 for the 2020 Ford van for the coroner's office, and this is to come from the coroner's supplies and expenses appropriation line. Road fund to the park and facilities catalog in the amount of $3,751.08. This is to come from the parks, programs, and supplies appropriation line. From the jail fund to Derek Johnson in the amount of $2,000. This is for cutting and removal of trees, and this is to come from the contracted services other appropriation line.
Any questions of Treasurer Ryder?
Move to pay the claims.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Magistrate Putman, and just so he doesn't dominate all the motions, I will skip over Magistrate McCollum and go to Magistrate Southern for the second, so everybody can feel like they participated. Any other questions of Treasurer Ryder? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Before we get to go to the county, I'm gonna ask Kenny Garrett, our EMA, if he has anything he'd like to add or update us on COVID response or any other items on his list.
Sure, no problem. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Kenny.
Good. Hello. We're kind of pretty much in recovery mode at this point. We're going through our day-to-day preparations to make sure that we start getting monies flow back in as we need to for the things that we've already spent. And at the same time, we're preparing for a potential surge later on in the fall. So I've sent out some information regarding that to everybody today, and it's just the incubation of the virus can happen in the hot summer months, and kind of gives us a false sense of security. So we have to still stay vigilant and prepare for that. So we're doing that on the PPE side of the house, just to make sure we've got everything in place that if we do see this thing come back around and get us again, we'll be ready for it more so than anybody was, when we first started. We moved our command staff meetings from a daily basis to a weekly basis, just because things have kind of slowed down a little bit. But I still send out daily emails to everybody, which most of you should get those when we have them. And other than that, everything's going pretty smooth. So we're just kind of letting things ride and staying vigilant. So that's about all I've got today.
Thank you. Any questions of Kenny? He's doing yeoman's work, working hard, and appreciate all that he has done so far. And we'll continue to do, and hopefully we will be able to be reimbursed for most, if not all, of the expenses we have been forced to utilize to respond to COVID. And that'll be a good thing for our county budget. Thank you, Kenny. I do notice that Eddie Vaught is on the call, and I want to say good to see you again. And last time I saw you, you just tangled with an inmate a little bit and little beat up, but you look like you're doing better. Everything okay?
Oh yeah, wasn't the first, won't be the last. Yeah, I'm healed.
Glad you're off the DL and back in the game.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Before we go to other good of the county, I do want to give the court a heads up on something that has forwarded to me yesterday and will probably happen again. As you know, the Henderson City County Planning Commission hears appeals and projects and passes judgments on the legality and conformity of suggestions for developments out in the county. And after they make a decision, technically, those decisions then come to the fiscal court for approval. And there's two ways that we can approve them. One is to literally go ahead and have a vote. The other is to not do anything. After a period of inactivity by fiscal court, the decisions of the planning commission are held as having been passed and are in effect. Or we can choose to deny a project if we have to, if we feel like it. Late yesterday afternoon, Brian Bishop, head of the planning commission, sent me the details on two projects that were approved. I actually watched the planning commission and know about these, and they're very normal, routine. Just wanted to let you know, in case you did not know, that ultimately the decisions of the planning commission do end up in our under our purview. And again, we can either vote to go ahead and ratify them, and they immediately become effective, or if we do nothing over a period of time, they again become law. So two things that they decided on were the rezoning of almost 2,000 acres, or actually a little over 2,000 acres in eastern Henderson County from heavy industrial to agriculture, in order for the owner to sell these properties back to whoever wants to buy them here locally. A company called Henderson LLC had bought the properties several years ago in order to eventually, they'd hoped to develop a natural gas power plant. At one time, it was going to be a coal conversion power plant. Never materialized. The project did not materialize. They couldn't get a customer. So they are basically getting out of that project and selling the land back to the highest bidder. So the question before Planning Commission was to approve rezoning to agriculture and then to allow the sale. And the Planning Commission unanimously approved that. The other question that came before the Planning Commission was a request by a couple to acquire a piece of ground in a subdivision out in the county and occupy it, converting an existing building into a home and perhaps adding to it. And again, that was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. If we do nothing on these, they will become in effect as of June 24th. Our next fiscal board meeting is on June 23rd. If you would like for me to have Brian Bishop email you these, if you want to see them, we can actually take our own action on June 23rd if you so move. If you've, again, these are pretty routine. If you feel comfortable just letting them go until June 24th when they become ratified on their own, that's fine too. But I say all that just to make sure that everybody understands the Planning Commission decisions do end up under our purview, and we have the final vote on these projects. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Does anybody want to see the projects from Brian Bishop? Email to them. I can arrange that as well. Charlie, you're on mute. Charlie, you're on mute.
I'd like to go ahead and have it put on our agenda for that meeting. Go ahead and give us the thing. Let's do resolutions and approve it. Let's do it the proper way.
Okay. And again, the proper way is either to vote or not to vote, either way, but absolutely we'll get that done. Okay. To go to the county. I'll start with Magistrate McCullum, since he just unmuted. Charlie, anything for good county? And by the way, I hope your health is good. I think you just had cataract surgery, and I hope you feel good.
I can now see out of one eye, so that's it's pretty neat actually. Dr. Greg Hayden did a great job, so I'm good. Everything is good in the fifth. I would like to just sort of make a comment. Maybe I should have done this when we were talking about the solar farm out there, but it's always sort of been a dream of mine, and I've talked to Brad about this. Bicycle paths, horse walking trails, and walking horses and bicycles are just a neat thing. It's great for a community. I read more and more about things like in Europe and Germany. I think like 20% of their transportation now is by bicycles for people getting to work. And it's not, it may be something we just don't think about. But as county attorney, I had a lot of people that either didn't have driver's licenses, they had a DUI and lost their license, couldn't drive for a period of time. And it had always been sort of a dream if we could have a bike path, a horse trail, from Henderson down to Roberts and over to the the park, the 4-star, over to Columbia, over to the brain injury camp, over to the chicken plant. I mean, it just seems to me it would be better for our whole community if you had those kind of transportations for alternatives for people, plus the recreation and the trails. People will come a long way to ride a horse. It's just pretty incredible. But when we're talking to the solar farm, if they could maybe, they're going to have some area that's set apart, that's, distanced maybe from the railroad track or something like that. To me, there's only 2 places that you can come under 425, and that's the old railroad beds, the old railroad bed and the current railroad bed. I just think it would be good for our community. Just bringing it up, it's always been something I thought was a good idea, and just would want to think about it. All's good in the 5th.
All righty. Magistrate Southern.
All's good in the 3rd. Wind's blowing and it's raining. So we're good. The road grader's been down working its rounds. Again, I appreciate the road department. They do a good job.
Okay, thank you. Magistrate Berry.
Thank you, Judge. Thank everybody for what they do. I kind of reiterate the fact Tim said, our river roads, river's down. I've talked to Bill, the road grader's been working. I had a couple of issues with that, driftwood, all kinds of things, but the river's down, it's looking good. So I think we're good. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Magistrate Moran.
Yes, I would like to encourage everybody to vote in the primary that hasn't. And I would like to compliment Renisa and her group for her office for all the extra work they've had to do to make all this possible. Everything's good in the 2nd.
Thank you. Magistrate Putman.
Thank you, Judge. Just want to say thank you to Bill Hubiak. I had him out in the rain the other day, and we got caught in a deluge. So he was trying to kind of give me some guidance on a ditch that's actually in the city that's probably needing some attention, but he was hooking me up with the correct people. Other than that, Judge, I'd say just stay safe and all is good in the 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Judge. Things are good in the county attorney's office. I think we've weathered the storm of the pandemic very well. I've been very impressed with our staff and the high level of output that we've been able to do, and we hope that we can just keep things up and continue to assist all parts of county government as we head to some sort of normalcy, hopefully. But other than that, all things are good, and we remain available anytime there is a need for anything from anybody in county government. I do want to go back just quickly to what the judge talked about regarding the Planning Commission. And I understand Magistrate McCollum said that he wanted to do it the right way. And I want to clarify that there's not been anything that's been done not the right way so far. 7.06 of the Henderson County Code of Ordinances does allow the fiscal court to decide to take action to notify the Planning Commission that the fiscal court will decide map amendments and things like that. But the way that it is currently set up is that the recommendation is automatically implemented unless within 21 days after final action by the commission, either an aggrieved party asks for it to come to the fiscal court, or the fiscal court decides to notify the Planning Commission and indicate that they're going to decide that. If that is the case, there is a hearing required, and that gets a little more complicated. So I just want to clarify what we were going to be doing at the next meeting. Are we going to be notifying the Planning Commission that the fiscal court will be taking those matters from them and conducting our own hearings?
I would suggest that these don't rise to that level myself.
Well, with my history and the fact that we had that fake map that was put up by the Planning Commission as an original wet-dry map for the city, for the Henderson County, that was based on the 2014 precinct data, I want everything to come through fiscal court. That should have come through fiscal court. Nobody approved it. The planning board didn't approve it. Nobody approved it. And that cost my family about $50,000 to have that come out, and it was a fake map. Additionally, after we had the vote on the wet-dry issue, the ABC sent the farmer and Frenchman a copy of an agreed order to dismiss. They signed it, sent it back, then the ABC wouldn't accept their own order that they drew up. They sent a new order and they put in there to stipulate that there was probable cause for the third hearing. The only justification for the third hearing was the fake map. So I want to see everything from the planning and zoning. I think that was wrong. It should never have happened. No one will investigate it. It should never have happened. I think it was a Class D felony. I think it was tampering with official records. So that's my point. I think the planning and zoning needs to be looked at. Somebody needs to look at that and see how that developed, who put it up. Now, when I talked to Brian Bishop about it earlier, his response was, I was only doing what I was told. And I said, well, who told you to do it? I can't tell you. It's his response to me. So that is wrong. I think it was illegal. And so I want to look at everything they do.
Looking at everything they do versus bringing it to court, two different things. I mean, I think it's absolutely anybody's right to look at all the things the Planning Commission does. But the point is, if we want to have a vote on every decision made by the Planning Commission, no matter how trivial seemingly, as Mr. Gold said, it's going to require a public hearing. We'll have to go through certain steps to notify the Planning Commission. Correct, Mr. Gold?
Yes, that's my reading of 7.06.
Well, that is my desire, whether it is anybody else's or not.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Mr. Southard, you're on mute.
We could look at each, everything they do without a hearing, right?
Right, but we have to decide as a group ahead of time whether we want to have it on the agenda and declare a public hearing.
So basically what we did today was we looked at it and now we're deciding whether we want to have a public hearing or not on the decisions they made. Correct?
Well, and 7.06 further says that it shall take a majority of the entire fiscal court to override the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Unless a majority of the entire fiscal court votes to override the Planning Commission's recommendation, such recommendation shall become final and effective.
Steve, where did that come in back?
I believe it was within the last few years. There was an amendment to, I believe it was KRS 100.347 that allowed that adoption of the alternative means. It was I believe, a business-friendly movement to keep things from being take so long for businesses to get things approved.
Well, we had this come up before whenever we had the Hill subdivision, and that was brought before fiscal court. That's the meeting we started at like 6 o'clock and didn't finish up till after midnight. Had 3-3 tie votes on everything, and that, you know, I was county attorney at the time, and I explained to the fiscal court that you had to have justification and reasons why you didn't go along with the Planning Commission if they were right. That was in the comprehensive plan to be developed as residential, and we had 3-3 tie votes not to do it. I did research while we were waiting and showed that you can't be arbitrary and capricious. You've got to treat everybody the same. If you don't treat everybody the same, then you lose your laws. You lose your planning laws get thrown out the window. The fiscal court, a couple of the magistrates said they didn't have to give reasons. I told them, explain to them that whoever has this has a right to appeal our decision if we are wrong. So we do have to tell them why we're voting the way we are, unless there's a change of circumstances, which you have to explain. And I didn't know that they had changed this, Steve.
Yeah, I believe that was, there were some changes that were made in 2014, and there was also, there's an ordinance that adopted the alternative regulation for zoning map amendment in KRS 100.2111.
When they do this, is it possible for us to do like we're talking about now, Brad, and just let us look at the information to decide if we want to do anything different?
Sure, absolutely.
I believe that was the idea that when that was passed was for the planning commission to send that to fiscal court to send that out to the members of fiscal court for review, and then if there was a desire or a disagreement after reading through the transcript of the public hearing and whatnot, that the fiscal court could then choose to step in.
So we should have had this information before now in that case, right?
Well, I got this yesterday afternoon. That's why I brought it up during the meeting today.
I understand you did, but planning and zoning should, if it's going to crack right before next meeting, it should have come before now. Is my point.
I can pass that along. I don't think there's any malicious intent here.
I don't care about malicious. I just want it done correctly and everybody notified, and for us to get a chance to review stuff. That's all I want.
I agree with that. I think we should have a chance to review things.
And again, I can have this sent to all of you. And Steve, I believe if we can review this conversation or have this conversation again at the next meeting, and then decide at that meeting if we want to have a public hearing and make a decision on the
yes. So a planning commission recommendation relating to a proposed map amendment shall be automatically implemented as set forth in the recommendations, unless within 21 days after the final action by the planning commission, either an aggrieved person files a request for the fiscal court to hear it, or the fiscal court files a notice with the commission that the fiscal court shall decide the map amendment. So those are the two ways that it comes. So there's 21 days from the date of that final action in which the fiscal court can give notice.
And the 21st day is actually the day of our next fiscal court meeting, June 23. So if I'm understanding you correctly, at that point, at that meeting, we could decide to notify the planning commission that we are going to take this under advisement, have a public hearing, and make our own vote. And that could happen at the following, the fiscal court meeting after that.
Yes, or even at a separate time if that was necessary.
Can we agree that I will send you this information at the next fiscal court meeting? We can put this on the agenda for discussion about what our next steps would be.
Thank you, Brad. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I will ask Brian Bishop to just go ahead and plan on emailing anytime this happens. Just email the entire court or email Kirk Neeson to distribute to the entire court. Some of these documents are pretty lengthy. I'm sure they might make very large files. We'll see how we can work around that if we can.
If they email them as a PDF, we can read them without having to print them all out. I hate printing all this stuff off personally.
Yeah, I got you.
I agree.
Okay. We will make that happen. Mr. Gold, anything else? I think we were good at the county.
All good. Sorry, I didn't mean to open up the can of worms. Just trying to.
No.
but I'm glad we had that discussion. To get everything
Steve, thank you.
clarified.
Okay. Finally, I want to make a couple points. I really appreciate Magistrate Moran bringing up voting. That is happening feverishly right now, counting votes. That's part of the reason we are meeting virtually today, because the fiscal court room has been designated as the counting room, and it is restricted as to who can enter. And So for the rest of this month anyway, we will be meeting virtually. I encourage everybody to vote. There is no reason you cannot vote in this primary. There's really no reason you can't vote in person if you so desire during this primary. And please call the clerk's office at 826-3906 for any questions about voting procedure, making an appointment to vote in person, and what the clerk's office plans to do on June 23rd, which is technically election day, to allow for in-person voting. So there will be options for people who prefer not to vote by mail or bring their absentee ballot into the drop box area in front of the clerk's office here at the courthouse. I am very proud of our community in the way that it conducted itself at rallies this weekend, justice rallies, also Black Lives Matter rallies. People had their say. They were able to march, they were able to protest, but we had no violence, we had no destruction of property. And I think in the end, focusing on the things we want as a community always sends the message louder and more clearly than if that message is mitigated by any kind of undue violence or undue destruction of property. And I was just really glad at the way it all came off, and I think people's voices were definitely heard. As Mr. Gold said, I'm really pleased personally with the reopening efforts here at the county courthouse and the way it's going so far. Sheriff's office is now open for in-person traffic, observing all CDC guidelines if possible, when possible. And as is the case with the county attorney's office, I believe the clerk's office will be opening July 1 after the election has ended and they're able to get through that. Probably the most talked about office in the entire community is the driver's license branch. I get more comments about when 16-year-olds are going to be able to get their license than any single question I think I've gotten in the last 2 months. And I believe that the circuit court clerk, Herb McKee, has announced options for that and how to renew licenses and also perform some sort of driver's test so teens can get on the road. So that's good news as well. I do believe our local testing numbers are pretty impressive considering the number of free tests available now is pretty widespread. Anybody can get a test now for free at various locations, and yet our number of positive tests is not spiking yet. Fingers crossed that that doesn't happen. Our number of deaths has remained at 4, and while those are very tragic and we're sorry for those families, it has not increased in the last, we have not seen another one in approximately 3 weeks. And all of those fatalities came from one facility, suggesting more challenges at that facility than in our community as a whole. So all, I think, hopeful news. And we just need to keep doing the best we can with social distancing. And I also appreciate the fact that things are beginning to open up now. Every day, seemingly, we have new businesses and organizations that can resume their activities in some fashion. So we continue to improve. So thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your input. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by McCollum and Master McCollum and Master Barry, and all those in favor can sign off. See you soon.
Have a good day, everybody.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you. You too.